Hello, New Zealand. It's episode number 29, Political Playback. Good to be at your place as we head into a long weekend, but we also commemorate for Anzac Day tomorrow. And Simon O'Connor is away this week, so I am very fortunate to have one of my good friends, Rodney Hide. Rodney, you're looking a little bit like the Orange Man there. Are you trying to do a Trump lookalike or something?
I am. I'm going to make a Trump comeback. Wouldn't that be wonderful? No, in Otago here, we get the sun coming down. I haven't got the curtains up, and the sun comes down at extraordinary angles, and it shines a very bright light. So I'm you've got a beautiful halo, though, I must say.
Oh, that's right. It's the only one I'll get. Catherine is watching from a sunny, crisp Dunedin. So there we go. If you'd like to put in your comments, then please send them through. We've got Lynette watching from Christchurch. So people are coming online. We've got lots to chat about tonight. Boy, we're going to define what is a woman, Rodney, and we can do that because we're actually married to one. So we know what a woman is, don't we?
Isn't it extraordinary? How do you begin to explain this? It's inexplicable, right? The only good news about this confusion about what is a woman is that I hope it'll be like for a lot of people, it allowed me to find my way to our Lord Jesus Christ and all of my family. Because you look at this and you say, this is absolute madness. Mm. And you start looking for what the truth of it is. And of course, you find the truth is in the Bible. And so my entire family have become Christian. I myself was baptized a couple of weeks ago. And that to me is a great upside because you can see a swing, particularly amongst young people, young men in particular, to believers in Christ. And I think that's where it's going to drive us because you need an antidote to this madness. And it forces you back onto your philosophy. And you realize that you can't reason your way through this. These people are mentally unwell, or I would regard them as being devil possessed, because anyone that can't understand the difference between a man and a woman is unwell in the head or possessed by the devil. And of course, it's to destroy women. They want to destroy womanhood. They want to destroy masculinity, and they want to destroy the family. And it's the sort of next level to muddy the difference between men and women, boys and girls, male and female. It's terrible. And how lucky we are that we've got Winston Peters actually prepared one politician.
That's a perfect segue. I mean, I was just listening to you then. Easter must have had a special meaning for you, Rodney, and I'm sorry to have to sort of drag you down into the mud of politics, but, well, it is called Political Playback, so I guess we have to look at it, but you've given a perfect overview of why half the topics we're talking about today are because politicians seem to be missing the boat on this. Look, let's get straight into it, and there's a bill being introduced. New Zealand First has got this bill. It's basically off the back of a petition that we put forward, the What is a Woman bill that was signed by 27,500 people. It was submitted last August. The Select Committee is still trying to figure out the answer, but Winston is giving them some help. Just actually, before we get some responses to have a bit of a chuckle at, including Chloe Schwarbrick from the Greens and Chris Hipkins, who has had 730 sleeps to think about the definition. Rodney, what do you think about the whole logistics of this and the politics of it? And also, Winston's had to put it into the ballot box. He can't introduce it as a government bill. You know, it's not kind of the government policy. Why is it not the government policy?
It's absolutely extraordinary, particularly with the experience of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is killing the Democrats in the United States of America because he's adopting policies that have got the support of 60 to 80% of the population. And the Democrats are doubling down and they're on the 20% side of these issues. And so Donald Trump's been very clear from day one about what is a woman. And you would think that Christopher Luxon and David Seymour would have the wit, not necessarily to agree with Donald Trump, but to read the room and to see what's happening. And Winston's going to clean up with this. I think they're stuck in a time warp. They adopted their politics when it was cool to be progressive. You could be a centre-right politician and think that you could agree with the rainbow community and the rainbow trends and be hip without any actual cost. It wasn't about putting up taxes or putting in a new department. But of course, what it is, it's a massive attack on our society, as we all know. 80% of New Zealanders know exactly what is a woman is, and they're outraged. And the only politician in New Zealand that's speaking for them is the Right Honourable Winston Peters, who can read the room. And if I clean my glasses, I do apologise. I've been out working, and the sun is bad. Thank you for the tip.
As long as we can hear you, that's the main thing.
I've been cutting up wood, and of course plywood, and the dust goes all over your glasses and your face.
And people are probably wondering why you suddenly thought that, and it's because Murray has kindly picked it out. Rodney, if you clean your glasses, the world might seem a brighter place.
Oh, it's you, Bob. It's Bob.
We actually
was wondering who it was.
We actually wanted the world to open their eyes to the truth, and I think that's what you were getting at, Rodney. Actually, the interesting thing, Rodney, is that even Keir Starmer, who's a leftist in the UK, the UK Prime Minister, he's actually figured out that trans women aren't women, and he's taken the leverage of the UK Supreme Court decision. So, in some ways, that's a bit of a leverage for Luxon and Seymour, is that they can't just be blamed on Trump.
No.
They can now say, well, actually, no, the UK Supreme Court has made the decision. And of course, New Zealand used to have the Privy Council in the UK. That used to be our highest court. So do you think, if anything, Seymour and Luxon actually do have a green light to do this now and not necessarily get lumped in with the anti-Trump attitude?
Totally they have. And they should support Winston's bill and make it a government bill and force Labor, the Greens and the Maori Party to run around saying that a man with testicles and a penis is a woman.
Yeah.
They would make a lot of hay. I don't understand what is wrong with them. I truly don't. And I'll go further. How can you trust or respect anyone who doesn't know what a woman is, or thinks that a woman is someone who gets up one morning and decides that they're a woman? Of course, Keir Starmer has the problem that he's done a 180-degree U-turn, but at least he's done it. Our guys are still stuck on it. How would they feel? How would Christopher Luxon feel if a man, rough man, clearly a man, walked in on his wife and his daughter in the changing sheds and just said, I'm a woman, and they walked in? How would they feel? And yet that is what our young daughters in New Zealand are confronting every day. He's okay because he lives in flash places. He doesn't have to put up with this nonsense. At the schools, we do.
Yeah, and we've actually got a speaker, Kirralie Smith from Binary in Australia, who's speaking at the Forum on the Family in August, and she has been calling out, there's a team in Australia, I think it's Queensland or maybe it's Sydney, where the team is stacked with basically biological dudes. There's about 5 of them, all pretending to be women, and they're completely cleaning up the league. And no team is they're all too scared to speak up because the league will come down and penalise them. And Kirralie has been speaking up. She's had 9 court cases battling this. But look, in response to, let's just have a look at some of the political responses in New Zealand, because that'll get you smiling. Firstly, our good friend Chloe Schrawbrick from the Greens, she was very upset by a bill that would actually define herself as an adult human female.
Flood homes and cut off thousands from power. Meanwhile, the cost of living is arguably getting worse as the government knowingly takes decisions to supercharge inequality. Yet this is the focus of our Deputy Prime Minister, to knowingly and intentionally distract you Trans people are not the reason that the cost of living is getting worse. They're not the reason that you cannot afford your rent. In fact, you have far more in common with your fellow New Zealander than you do with politicians seeking to divide you. Everybody simply wants a warm, dry, safe home, an affordable and accessible healthcare system, access to education and employment, and a place to build community. Those are the things that unify us. Do not get sucked in by this imported culture war designed to inflame and to divide us.
Yes, the imported culture war. This is from the same party that wants puberty blockers on demand. Rodney, just before you respond to what Chloe said, I spoke to Winston Peters yesterday and played that exact clip to him. This was his response. Now, remember, Chloe is the one that said, "Okay, boomer," as a derogatory statement in Parliament. Listen to what Winston says.
You know, those 4 things she mentioned about what people want. New Zealand First and me, Winston Peters, has made those 4 things famous. I've said that for 45, 47 years. And here she is there sitting down grabbing me, even those lines as she's attacking me. You know what I say to her? Okay, groomer.
That is so good.
Now, what do you think of Chloe's response in this whole imported culture war label that's thrown
Well,
around?
her entire political platform is a series of platitudes that are imported from the United States of America, and they are exactly the cause of the culture war. And they have brought the American culture war to New Zealand. And every part of her rhetoric is straight out of the far left from the American universities. There's nothing Indigenous or Kiwi about Chloe Slowbrook's platform. And of course, everything about her policies would make us poorer and less able to afford power and have a nice home. And of course, in saying that men and women are different, we're not saying that it's a choice between whether we know what a woman is and whether someone can have a house or not.
Yeah.
And they've done an amazing trick, because the Rainbow Coalition was originally about inclusion, to make people who were homosexual feel part of society, not shunned, and decriminalise homosexual acts. But of course, the trans movement isn't about inclusion, because a man saying he's a woman is fully included in New Zealand society. There's nothing they can't do. What they can't do is be a woman, because that is biologically not possible. I'm sorry that they can't do that. And because they can't be a woman, they can't be allowed to invade women's safe spaces like changing sheds and toilets. We keep those separate for a reason, for the safety and the privacy and the respect and the dignity of women. That's why we do it. Now, I've had the great pleasure to know many trans people with my time in politics, and all of them were lovely and oftentimes had hard stories. They weren't at all like this. They knew they weren't women. And I remember 20 years ago being pulled aside by one and being told that their movement had been taken over by these radicals. And this is people, A, with a political agenda to destroy everything that's good and great about society, and sexual deviants and voyeurs and exhibitionists who want to be able to get in our ladies' changing sheds and toilets. And the very fact that they want to be there is the very reason they can't be allowed. And the idea that Chloe Swarbrick is too unwell, I don't know what to describe it as, to see what is going on with women. Who's going to take responsibility for the first girl that's attacked by a man that thinks he's legitimately able to go into a toilet?
Okay, so Winston Peters went on to State Radio, Radio New Zealand. I'm sure you had some doozy interviews on Radio New Zealand as well, Rodney. And, I mean, I listened to the interview. I thought that Winston did come very hostile. I mean, that's just the nature when he goes into some of these stations. I think for anybody who's watched some of the coverage, and I'll just show you the One News coverage and then get you to comment, but for those who watch the One News coverage, they only looked at the interview that Corin Dan from Radio New Zealand did with Winston. But I then listened to the interview that I think it's Ingrid Hipkins, the female presenter, adult human female, had with Chris Hipkins. And it's night and day in terms of the aggressiveness, the questioning, and to be honest, they let Chris Hipkins get away with blue murder because he was completely misrepresenting the effect of the UK Supreme Court about, I mean, he was trying to argue that it was a case about diversity, equity and inclusion. Of course it wasn't. It was about whether women are biologically female, whether the definition of woman is an adult human female. But anyway, this is a response of One News to Winston Peters. And Winston Peters said, look, we need to look at the funding of Radio New Zealand. And of course, some funding into TV NZ as well, but Radio New Zealand in particular. Have a look, because I'm interested to hear what you think about the accusation or the statements made by Winston.
I'm the devil's advocate here, and I put up the argument for you to answer.
I thought your job was to hear both sides of the story.
It is, and if anyone who looks at this interview will see that that is exactly what I've been doing, and I'm trying to get you to answer that question.
You're doing most of the talking, aren't you? The fact is you're paid for by a taxpayer, and sooner or later we're going to cut that water off too because you're an abuse on the taxpayer. You're not hearing both sides of the story. You keep on putting the argument of the woke left. You're a disgrace to the mainstream media.
This exchange during an interview about a New Zealand First Members Bill, attempting to define a woman and a man in law.
Threatening a media entity that is statutorily independent with cutting their funding because you don't like the way you're being interviewed is utterly unacceptable for any minister. Even more unacceptable when that person happens to be the Deputy Prime Minister.
The soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister says Mr Peters doesn't have the power to cut funding from RNZ.
The person to announce anything like that, if there was anything like that, would actually be Paul Goldsmith.
So we asked Paul Goldsmith if that was the case. He told One News that Mr Peters has his own unique style with which he won't be seeking to interfere. RNZ says it has a rigorous editorial policy and that Corin Dan conducted himself in a professional manner in what was a robust political interview.
So typical that RNZ in your form would start putting their arguments.
Well, that's my job, Mr Peters, to put up an argument.
An argument which may not be over yet, Mr Peters taking to Facebook after the interview to call Corin Dan an arrogant, wokester loser.
Okay, so Rodney, you've been a cabinet minister. You would know the rules. Is Winston breaking the rules?
No, not at all. There's no way of enforcing that particular rule. Obviously, the Prime Minister's not going to do anything. The only disappointing thing about that entire exchange is that it's only about looking at the funding. The funding to Radio New Zealand should cease forthwith, because basically you're funding the propaganda arm of the New Zealand Labour Party and the Greens. And I object strongly to my money that goes to the government being used for that purpose. It's absolutely disgusting. We'd have a much better society if we didn't have public radio spouting the nonsense that they've had. And propaganda. They've been propagandizing us for years and years and years. It used to be called Red Radio back in the 80s, and nothing has changed except it's deteriorated. Winston Peters is 100% right, but don't look at cutting the funding. Cut it. We don't need these public broadcasters. For a start, we've got Family First's broadcasts to listen to, which are far superior.
Well, that was a great little advert plug there. I thought you were going to say RCR and the platform. And some chocolates for Easter. Don't forget about the chocolates for Easter. Now,
I had to fight the kids for my chocolate.
Now, let's just revisit the leader of the Labour Party, Chris Hipkins. Does he know what a woman is? 2 years ago, he was asked the question and he really struggled. So this is 2 years ago.
Define a woman.
To be honest, Sean, that question's come slightly out of left field for me. Biology, sex, gender. People define themselves. People define their own genders.
Okay, so that was 2 years ago. He's had, 730 sleeps to think about it. And he told Radio New Zealand yesterday that he had thought about it.
Oh, I mean, look, I reflected on that interview quite a lot since it wasn't an interview, it was a press conference, and that question at the press conference quite a lot since then, because it did, I could have answered that question a lot better than
How would
I
you
did.
answer it now then? What is a woman?
Well, I'd answer ultimately with the same thing. A woman is someone who regards themselves as a woman.
Yeah, so apparently if you've got a prostate and a penis, you're still a woman if you feel like that, according to Chris Hipkins. Interestingly enough, one of the possible replacements for Chris Hipkins, if he gets rolled, is lawyer Arena Williams. And she was asked in the election campaign 2 years ago, can a woman have a penis? And it was part of a panel and they had paddle boards. They just had to answer yes or no. Have a watch to her response.
Can a woman have a penis? It is a genuine one. Okay. Can a woman have a penis?
Is that a yes?
It is a genuine one. Okay.
Yes. Yep. So, so that's your possible next leader of the Labour Party, who's a lawyer, Arena Williams.
It's like, how do you get to that dark place, Bob? Like, seriously, it's inexplicable. Like, just, yes, a woman can have a penis. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension to anyone.
It's called barking mad, but I think
barking mad, like a 5-year-old kid understands it. And these people, it's just, I'm just so pleased my dear mother isn't alive to witness that. Oh my goodness.
Somebody's asking me how much I'm paying you because you did that little advertisement for Family First.
Pays me way too much.
And Simply Green says, what percentage of female deaths are due to testicular cancer? And Dean
but it's
says,
a disrespect, isn't it? It's a total disrespect of womanhood and motherhood and all the beauty of the sexes and being a human being. And again, it's what made me realize the truth of the Bible, because it so throws you back philosophically, and you realize what is missing in our world today, and it's Christian belief. And that's what they're running against. And that's why what you do, Bob, and your listeners do, is so incredibly important. And why what is ultimately important in our society is not left and right or Maori and Pākehā, but whether we live in a Christian society or one where people run around saying a woman can have a penis.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a look at, because there's been I think there is a cultural tipping point, and interestingly, that's one of the, that's actually our topic for our conference in August that you're coming to, and we'll tell people more about that at leading up to that. But the New Zealand Herald, so the title of the conference is Courage at a Cultural Tipping Point, and it's looking at examples of people who have stood up and have been brave. And I think you have, Rodney, and we're going to come to one of the topics to get an update on that with the REC shortly. But the New Zealand Herald, did you have much to do with Fran O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Yes. So she wrote this article, Why the UK Supreme Court Decision Matters for Women's Rights. And in it, she says that the UK Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the British Equality Act refer only to a biological woman and to biological sex. Now, Chris Hipkins completely misrepresented that on Radio New Zealand, but didn't get pulled up for it. And then Fran O'Sullivan says it's a victory for common sense. This is coming out of the New Zealand media and the New Zealand Herald. And then, blow me down with a feather, she says this. She refers to, now I'm just trying to find it and I've lost it, but she refers to Posey Parker, and she calls her a pro-woman. Oh, here we are. The Hipkins question came after the furor over the visit by British pro-woman activist Posey Parker. Have you ever seen in the New Zealand media someone say that Posey Parker was a pro-woman activist? That's the first time.
Never. She's always been a Nazi.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's a sign of the shift that's occurring, because the one thing that Fran O'Sullivan can do, she's a smart lady, and she can smell political winds. And here she is doing a 180 on the Herald, and obviously got it published. And it's a first for the Herald to actually come out in support of women and the difference between a man and a woman. And they have been for years and years now attacking anyone like Posey Parker who would try to make that distinction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so something is happening. Now, let's check out the political parties, because as we heard, Easter meant extra special lot to you and your family over the Easter period. Interesting just to see how the political parties recognised it. And obviously with the National Party, Luxon had done a special video message with Mark Mitchell for the start of Ramadan, and had been in India with President, what's his name?
Modi.
Modi. Yeah, and we saw the bowing down, and people said, well, that's just being polite with your host. So how did it come with Easter? Well, I actually had a look at some of the political parties. Now, Christopher Luxon did have a picture with his family and talked about, the importance of Easter to Christmas, but it was basically words similar to this. Happy Easter. The Labour Party, they had a dog. And I was thinking about this, and I think that might have been a typo. I think they meant God, but they got it round the wrong way and put dog. So maybe they did the AI wrong. They're not that smart, maybe. The ACT Party, they went back to bunny rabbits and, however you choose to spend it, like good libertarians. The Green Party, they said that it was a long weekend for light activism. So that's how they wanted to spend Easter. And then New Zealand First actually got down to the real meaning. So it's quite a contrast when you look at all the parties and how they showed it. And blow me down, you'll be surprised at this, Rodney. Even the Human Rights Commission actually talked about a blessed Easter, and you'll see down the bottom there, it talks about the resurrection, the crucifixion of Jesus and the resurrection from the dead. That's the leftist Human Rights Commission, who obviously have had some good personnel change at the top. But, I mean, from your time in Parliament, would you be expecting political parties to be a bit more overt about times like Christmas and Easter, or is it just tokenism?
It's incredibly sad, isn't it? And when I was in Parliament, I wasn't a Christian, sadly, but I had full respect for the prayer and our traditions and our heritage. And a significant number of our parliamentarians were Christian and would vote accordingly on individual votes that they would have. And it was well respected and well understood. And of course, what has happened is bit by bit, faster and faster, our politicians have run as fast as they can away from Christianity, because they have grouped Christianity along with colonialism, Western society, slavery, Nazism, everything that is bad. And so Christopher Luxon a Christian will have nothing whatsoever to do with it, which to me is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And again, Winston Peters, he's there recognising what's wrong with New Zealand politics, a lack of recognition of our history in New Zealand. We're a Christian society, and actually what we need in our society is Christian understanding. I just despair for the National Party and the ACT Party, to be honest. And look, it's not hard. It's not hard to do a respectful greeting for Christians for Easter, particularly when you go through the pretense of doing one for Ramadan.
Yeah.
And gosh, that was the most awfulest, worstest, all the wrong words video I have ever seen of two men sitting side by side trying to be sincere about Ramadan, and they couldn't be bothered to even put out a little image for Easter other than a bunny rabbit.
Okay, now we were talking about kids in the school and the RSE and you being brave, and I think you've led the charge on this one along with some other groups. So the RSE and One News, so, you know, obviously they're doing this review. They've withdrawn the radical extreme version that groups like Family First, Let Kids Be Kids, and others have been kicking up a stink about. So One News decided to come, they talked about it a whole week after it actually happened, and they said that apparently the draft framework is dangerous. It's very dangerous. Now, who said it was dangerous? Well, it was none other than the Inside Out group. And, of course, One News rushed off to get their opinion, so this was a little bit of the coverage.
Recent decades have seen growing recognition of the rainbow community. But gender diversity is increasingly controversial in relationships and sexuality education in schools. The latest Education Ministry proposal, a dangerous step backwards, according to one advocate.
We're incredibly disappointed to see the new framework completely erasing any mentions of gender diversity. We think that's incredibly harmful for trans young people.
The draft framework covers relationships, safety and consent, and pubertal change and sexual health. Different sexual orientations and the term intersex feature, but transgender and other terms from the 2020 guidelines are not included.
Well, let me just correct that, because in fact we've highlighted that from year 11, which is fifth form, our fifth form, Rodney, that they actually do start separating out sex and gender. So the ideology does kick in. But anyway, just continuing.
It's incredibly frustrating to see a vulnerable group of young people's lives kind of being politicised in this way, just based on the coalition agreement.
But the Education Minister thinks it's a good document. She's proud of the year-by-year consent guidance.
Is it okay if someone wants to share my bike? Should they have to ask? How should I respond? And it builds it all the way through to talking about consent, in a sexual term.
One researcher says the scope is too narrow for helping students navigate relationships. She also teaches and says the message from her students is clear.
Just a warning, Rodney, this is a lecturer from Canterbury University who did the Beyond the Birds and Bees phone app. I don't know if you remember that, but it was way beyond the birds and the bees. Anyway.
We're not actually learning anything about how to have positive sexual relationships. So how are we supposed to know that? The only way we can find out actually what to do involves going to look at pornography online.
Let Kids Be Kids group says the framework is a step in the right direction with reduced emphasis on gender diversity. But the group disagrees with some parts, like 12 to 13-year-olds learning about healthy sexual activity and the legal age of consent.
The way they're teaching about consent is potentially opening the door for children to be burdened with the decision of consent at an age before it's even legally consent.
Exactly. And I know you've had a bit to do with Let Kids Be Kids, Rodney.
Yes, 100%.
Look, just firstly, give us an update on the last time we did a McBlog together. We were talking about the fact that the Board of Trustees didn't want you to come in and talk to the board about your concerns with the RSE. Oh, no, sorry. It was the heads survey that was asking your daughter whether she was sexually active, even though she's 13. What's the update on that? Where's that at?
Well, they have scrubbed supposedly her data, her response, because I asked for it to be removed. So just for everyone's understanding there, they have this program where schools need to be take into account the mental well-being of students. And there are little private companies that have been set up, and they turn up at the school, get paid, and they run an online survey to assess mental well-being. And my daughter is 13. She's in second year of high school. And so without our consent, she logs into this platform, and she's asked, has she had sex yet? Well, that's not an appropriate question of anyone, Bob.
Okay.
This company that did it is run by a couple of odd-looking characters who have registered their office as their home. And the answers are collected up, they say, from over 100 schools across the entire cohort. And they've got kids answering whether they've had sex or not and whether they take drugs or not.
Yep.
And they have the database. And the schools facilitate this. Now, if a teacher asked my daughter whether she had had sex or not, I would make sure he or she was fired. But because I've done it under the rubric of this, we're just assessing mental health, it's all okay. But of course, what they're doing is normalizing sex for kids. When we were kids, we might have someone who stole a Playboy and we'd get all excited looking at it. But we knew it was wrong. We knew that if our parents found out or if our teachers found out, we'd be in trouble. What this is doing is your teachers are actually talking about whether you've had sex or not, discussing with you the giving and gaining of consent when you're 13, and they're totally normalizing sex, so much so that at 13, if you're not having sex, you might think there's something wrong with you, because clearly the school's going on and on about it. I myself have gone hardcore on this, and I think the school should teach nothing but the biology of sex, because they show themselves absolutely incapable of dealing anything remotely like a proper sexual relationship. The entire course that they have had to date, and the one that they're continuing with, all they've done in that course is remove transgenderism, which is a plus. But all the rest of it, the hedonism is still there, and there's no concept of a young girl or a young boy growing up to be a woman and a man and getting married and reserving sex for marriage and the procreation of children, which is its purpose. None of that is in this discussion. None of it is there. It is simply something that you do like kicking a football around after school.
Yeah, I think my concern was that even though you can't explicitly see the word transgender, you got to remember that groups like Family Planning, which is now called Sexual Wellbeing Aotearoa, because they're trying to hide their identity, and Inside Out, they will take anything they can to the absolute extreme. But the other thing is that even from an underage for sex age, so in other words, year 9, 10, 11, so 13, 14, 15, they're teaching about sexual activity, so-called safer sexual activity. They're talking about how to get confidential information. Who do they want to keep it confidential from? It'll be from the parents. And that they can get where they can get this advice, and they're not involving parents in any of that. So I would say there's still huge red warning flags. It's not so much about explicitly what's stated, it's how far these radical groups who come into the schools, how far they take it, isn't it? And I think that was the case.
Everything in the school now should be you either tick a box, you're a boy or a girl. But of course, they've got gender diverse and non-binary and a whole lot of other boxes that a student can tick. And I will have no respect for our government, Christopher Luxon and David Seymour, as long as that exists. Because you shouldn't be indoctrinating 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds into being something other than how they were born. And while I'm appreciative of Winston Peters, it's not enough just to talk about it, Mr. Peters. You need to stop this stuff dead in the schools. Getting it out of RSC is a good thing, but when you enroll in a school at 12, you shouldn't be self-selecting what your gender is.
Yeah. Okay, and so look, really important for people to make a submission. Go to our website, Family First, and have a look at some of the information.
And Bob, just because you gave me chocolate for Easter, I have to put a plug. Your work that Family First has done on the RSE has been outstanding. And I noticed that you were immediately across this. You announced to the world that the guidelines had been put out, and you had a summary and your thoughts on it up very, very quickly. So you've been absolutely marvellous on this. So thank you for that.
Well, I always think that the reason that they get away with this, Rodney, is because they do it in the dark of night. They do it behind parents' backs, even a lot of schools, teachers, principals were not fully aware of just what the material was. And when you actually expose it, throw the light on it.
It shows you that they're ashamed of it, actually.
Yeah, of course they are. They know that it would never win by public approval, so they do it sneakily. Right, let's move on. And I did just want to ask you about this. The media seem to be floating this idea of a snap election, and it's come about because of the fact that Winston and Luxon were having a bit of a disagreement about tariffs and whether they should wait and see what's happening with the US and the Chinese, which I agree with. They should wait it out and not panic and rush like the media are. But Luxon seemed to be responding to the media, and Winston was saying, well, hold your horses. And so you've got them saying Labor talks up potential for a snap election. And then you've got our favourite political editor, Jenna Lynch, from Stuff, saying to snap or not to snap, who's ready for an early election. Rodney, my personal view is if there's an early snap election, I've got a bridge to sell you. What's your thoughts?
Same. This is just journalists making up stories to fill their news clips, and also to try and do a bit of mischief. Just the normal tensions of politics and government. It's not even a big deal. No one takes them seriously. You can't despise journalists enough. You actually can't. They are truly, truly despicable in how they operate and behave. Just on the tariff thing, I don't understand why New Zealand isn't on the phone to the White House and saying, listen, we'll do zero tariffs for everything American and cut a deal for our farmers. Because I think Mr. Trump would love to sign up a free trade deal with any country to show that he's winning. And we could do that easily. Instead, we're talking about the stupid World Trade Organization and the world order. Man, we should be rushing into the opportunity that Donald Trump has created for New Zealand, saying, hey, we're tariff-free. We'll take anything that you supply. How about a bit of reciprocity, which is what they're asking for? And I think it would be a big feather in the cap for Donald Trump's White House to sign a country to a free trade agreement. Why should it be Venezuela or somewhere like that when it could be New Zealand? First in.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it amusing that the media think that China can do no wrong, that there's no slave labor or bad regulations, that they're just the
stealing
greatest country out for trade. And America is a bad guy. Look, I didn't warn you about this one, but I did just want to ask you because I know you were Minister of Local Government a few years ago, and I was just keen to ask you, Andrew Little, Mayor for Wellington. I mean, he can only be better than the current Green representative who's Mayor. But would you be voting for Andrew Little?
No. Andrew Little's, when you meet him and spend time with him, which I have done, is very excellent and very sensible. But man, he doesn't do anything. So I had to do with him on a couple of issues, and he promised he'd do this, that, and the other thing, and nothing happened. So he's a very promising politician.
Yeah.
He promises a lot and delivers nothing. So
Well,
I find him a total disappointment.
He never won my favour because he championed through the abortion bill on behalf of Jacinda.
Right.
Took cover for her, and he also, in my view, misrepresented the cannabis legalisation bill as well and tried to sugarcoat the actual effect of legalisation. The good news was that New Zealanders saw through that sugarcoating. He also tried to suggest that we were getting copious amounts of funding from the United States, this imported culture war again. Of course, we didn't receive a cent from overseas, but anyway. Final topic, Rodney. It's 18 months and sort of halfway through the coalition government's 3-year term. We're about to get a new Deputy Prime Minister in David Seymour. And I think I just asked you, I think we agreed, did we, that we would just say who were our top 2 performing members of Parliament so far and our 2 worst. So shall we start with the best? Who's your top 2 performing MPs for this first 18 months?
Well, you can't go past Winston Peters. I never thought those words would come out of my lips. But he's having a blinder of a time. 0 marks for delivery, but 100% for reading the room and pushing the boat out and sticking to his guns. It's just fantastic. So I'm full of praise for what Winston's done. He got the COVID and Royal Commission going, so good on him. I also have a favourite MP, and it's my local MP, Mr. Joseph Moni. And he's amazing. He's a very, very excellent local member. I've had occasion to write to him, and he's always been very good as a local MP. But he took me out for a coffee, and we had a long chat, and I found him to be very excellent. And I was very impressed. He's high calibre. So they would be my 2 best MPs. Bob, what about yours?
Okay, well, I have to agree with you. Winston Peters would be up the top there. I think he has basically brought in a lot of policies that a lot of social conservatives would have been championing as well. I think, like you, and maybe your concerns with politicians is that they can do a lot of the talk, but they've got to actually see results. Now, I know that the difficulty for Winston Peters is that he's only got so many MPs, so he's only got so much weight in Parliament and around the cabinet table. And that was actually one of the questions I asked him when I interviewed him this week was, look, you've put these bills on DEI, getting rid of DEI, getting rid of woke banks, defining male and female, and trying to deal with puberty blockers, etc. But, so they're making the right noises. But as he said, the difficulty is that they've got, 7 or 8 seats. And so their voice is small around the cabinet table and influence in Parliament. I just wish that David Seymour and Christopher Luxon would get some backbone and realise that these are actually mainstream issues and that there is a lot of support for them. So, so Winston Peters. And my other one, just observing in terms of performance, I would put Simeon Brown up there because he's actually a young guy. Really like him as a person. He's got good values. He's actually a social conservative at heart. But in terms of the portfolios he's been put in front of, he hasn't really made any missteps, and he's taken on some pretty tricky ones, and including health at the moment. That's a big battle. I used to always think, Rodney, that if you were the Minister of Education, that's like being given the job that they want to get rid of you. But it's like being the Minister of Health now is a job that you're given if they want to get rid of you. Would that be correct?
It's not a job that anyone shines in. The Minister of Health survives if they're good and they're lucky. That's the best outcome that they can get.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a few votes coming in here. Sandy says
Casey
Simeon Brown as well.
Costello's great.
Casey Costello. Rosie says that Winston's smashing it. Somebody's put Karen Chor as well. Yeah, so there have been a few sort of newer ones, backbenchers. All right, let's just finish off on a positive, and let's put the boot into our worst MPs. Who's on your... I'll start. Rodney, seeing you started the last one. So I've got two worst MPs. The worst MPs are the entire Te Pāti Māori caucus, and the second worst MP is the entire Green caucus. Does that qualify?
Yes, it does.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I've got two MPs, though. I put Te Pāti Māori just to one side. The worst MP in my book is Chloe Swarbrick.
True.
And I take grave exception to this cuddling of the cause of Hamas. And I can never forgive anyone who would minimise what happened on October the 7th.
Yeah.
And ignore what happened on October the 7th.
Yeah.
And end up making, re-victimizing the victims and making them the oppressor. That, to me, for a reasonably sensible politician, is beyond disgusting. She has to be my worst MP for that. In this play where she walks around with a tea towel around her in support and shouts "River to the Sea," she's calling for a genocide of the Jewish people. And it's been pointed out to her that she's calling for the genocide of the Jewish people, and yet she will continue. So she is beyond contemptible. My second worst MP is Christopher Luxon. And I pick on him because he's the Prime Minister. And he can do stuff. He could actually fix one thing. He could choose an issue and he could fix it. And he hasn't. Not a jolly thing. He's got absolutely no conviction. He's got no courage. He's got no belief. He's got no values. He's got no principles that we can discern as him as a politician. And as they would say in the army, he is a complete waste of rations. And here he is in the most powerful position in New Zealand and can't do one thing that he believes in because he doesn't actually believe in anything. So he's, to me, I've never seen anyone like him. Never. Never, ever. I mean, John Key, he would get animated about the cycleway and the flag. Pretty stupid stuff, right? But at least there was something that got him going. What animates Christopher Luxon? It's just, I find him beyond description. And of course, you can see it with the National Party. It's leaderless and rudderless. It's got no direction whatsoever.
Okay, well, we have gone well over time, but we've had a great natter, and I hope, well, we've enjoyed it, so I hope the audience has as well. There's been a lot watching, so that's always a good sign. Anyway, Rodney, you have a great weekend. Thank you for your input. Really appreciate you being a guest, and I'm sure we'll see you on Straight Talk in a week or two. And to our audience, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.